Welcome on into Second Round Syndrome, your talk for the Philadelphia 76ers and the NBA. I'm your host, DJ Sports Zone. With me is my wonderful co-host, Hav Harris. How's it going, dude?
What's up? What's up?
So it's so funny because at the end of our last show, we did a whole segment on Trae Young, a possible trade, because Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks were having discussions about a possible move. Literally before we even get to post the episode, a Trae Young trade happens. Now, I said that it probably was going to take a couple of days, but it literally took a day for it to happen. Hav, you were pretty close with what was going to be given up to acquire Trae Young. You said it was going to be a salary dump. I
hmm
thought it was going to be kind of a more three-team centric trade, and I gave a trade involving even the Dallas Mavericks for Anthony Davis. This is what was given up for Trae Young. So Trae Young goes to the Wizards, right? And the Hawks get CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert. That's it. That's all that was given up for Trae Young. No picks, no young players. Like Ricochet was not given up. That's all for Trae Young. And I was pretty shocked about that trade. Do you think that Washington fleeced Atlanta?
Not really, not necessarily fleece. I think that Atlanta got out of it what they wanted, which was financial flexibility. And then Washington was able to capitalize on that without giving up any draft capital. So I think it's a win-win trade for both sides.
Yeah, I think it's good for Washington because you get Trae Young. Now, I don't believe Trae Young is going to actually play this season at all. I mean, there was a report literally 2 hours ago from Shams Charania that says new Washington Wizards star Trae Young is still recovering from MCL and quad injuries on the same leg, and we will be reevaluated after the mid-February All-Star break. So at the soonest he could come back is February, March, maybe. But Washington, I believe they have a top 8 protected pick for the draft. Do you risk bringing in Trae Young, or do you just sit him? And in my opinion, my comparison to this is what the Raptors did with Brandon Ingram last season. They brought Brandon Ingram in. They didn't play him at all. They said it was an ankle sprain, which that must have been the worst ankle sprain on planet Earth, if that was true, which I don't believe it was true. I just think they wanted a pick, which they ended up getting. I believe it was the number 9 pick, which was Colin Murray Boyles. Do you think that's the right move, holding him out, or should they try playing him and integrate him into the system?
I don't think he plays a game for the Wizards this year, and I don't think he should for either side. I mean, he has a player option next year, so it's not like he's going to get a major payday unless they agree on an extension there in Washington. But there's no reason to play him. I mean, what's he going to gain playing an extra 30, 40 games with what we've talked about is a young core, but not necessarily a promising core. But they have some good pieces, but it's not going to make that much of a difference. And they have to stay in that top 8, like you said, or else their pick gets shipped out. So I think that for all parties involved, the best thing to do would just be sit them.
I still think this is the beginning of a rebuild process. I mean, they've been rebuilding for years and years. They have promising talent. I mean, again, I like Koulibaly. I like Keyshawn George, right? I like some of their young pieces, Bub Carrington, Alex Sarr. Trae Young, I think, will fit in nicely. I still don't know if it's going to result into winning over the next couple of years. You know, hey, they finally get a big star since John Wall, Bradley Beal, even that 1 year they got from Russell Westbrook. So that's kind of good. At least they have a star, biggest star they've had in a couple of years, right? But I don't know. I don't know if I love the trade, especially on the Atlanta side of things. Now, who knows? Maybe Atlanta would have had to give up a pick just to get rid of Trae Young. No other team wanted him. I was shocked, per se, that Trae Young's top preferred destination was Washington. Now, I think part of the reason that is because they were probably the only team that was willing to pay him an extension. Now, that hasn't happened yet. We still don't know if that's going to happen, but you can only assume you're going to make a trade for Trae Young to give him an extension. So, as for the Atlanta side of things, my initial reaction to this when I put out a video, now, if you haven't seen it, I put out reaction videos to NBA, NFL games on DJ Sports Zone, but I also react to news that happens. I reacted to the Trae Young news as soon as that came out. I thought the one caveat, no, they didn't get young players. No, they didn't get picks, right? I like Corey Kispert. I think he's going to stay on the roster, but CJ McCollum, I mean, again, he's a great veteran. He's coming off the bench for the first time in his career. I don't know how much he's going to do for this team moving forward. I thought they would use these assets to go for Anthony Davis. Now, I just cannot imagine at this point any team trying to trade for Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is once again out for multiple weeks. Now, there were conflicting reports from Shams where, I mean, he got a ligament tear in his hand. That did happen. There was a report that he was going to require surgery and he was going to be out for multiple months. I did see that AD responded to tweets about that, saying that was a lie. And then
he tweeted out, "Don't listen to the lies."
Yes. And then literally a day or two later, Shams basically corrects himself. And the new report is he will not require surgery on his injured hand after a second opinion with specialist Dr. Stephen Shin in Los Angeles on Tuesday and will be reevaluated in 6 weeks. That's still 6 weeks. And even, the post says, as reported earlier, the Mavs had renewed trade talks around AD with multiple interested teams, and those conversations are continuing as Dallas stands 15-25, 12th in the Western Conference, and prioritizing the big picture outlook around Cooper Flagg. He's still missing 6 weeks. I mean, that's going to go through the trade deadline. Now, a team could say, okay, well, maybe we can get him as a postseason piece. Like he's going to be ready to go for the playoffs, but that's a huge risk. Does that make sense at this point that any team should even consider trading for Anthony Davis?
Well, first things first, everything we read is whatever Rich Paul wants us to read. Mm-hmm. Like whatever because everything is agent driven. All of this is agent driven. Just for anyone that doesn't know and wants to see behind the curtains, the agents put all these reports out from Shams. They used to be from Woj. Like whatever angle they need their client to get for the best deal for them, they're going to put out there. So multiple teams interested. It's probably one or two. You know what I mean? That want to kick the tires and have the cap space kind of similar to the Wizards. And they said, it's better than what we're doing right now. So I don't know which those teams would be. I don't know who's in the rumors. I know we've talked about Atlanta, Chicago, Toronto, but like how many, and we talked about it in our little pre-show. Does Toronto want to blow up what they're doing, which is kind of working for a chance on AD? And then you don't know what you're going to get from him this year. And you're messing up the continuity and you're blowing things up. You just brought Brandon Ingram in. So why teams are still interested in Anthony Davis is because they see the appeal of what he can be. It's kind of similar to Joel Embiid, like what he could be when he's healthy. AD obviously has a little bit more of a injury history than Embiid, and it's a little bit more consistent in the problem areas. It's not so much freakish as, Kuminga falling on him, Fultz hitting him in the face, not to compare the two. But in terms of Anthony Davis, it's just always going to be the talent that's alluring to these other teams.
Yeah, and Anthony Davis, he's already in his 30s, right? And again, it doesn't get better with age. He's played, I believe it's 29 games since getting traded to the Dallas Mavericks. That's ridiculous. And we keep going back to, and I, by the way, I'm going to keep going back to this Luka Doncic trade because the more and more that come out, right? The more injuries that Anthony Davis has, it's just the more mind blowing this whole trade was to begin with. And it's not new. And I get the idea of putting Anthony Davis on any contender. If this is 2K and you turn the injuries off, I understand it. And you compared it to Joel Embiid. At least we've seen Joel Embiid in the last 5 years be one of the most dominant players in the NBA as the number one option on a playoff team. Anthony Davis hasn't done that. You could talk about his Pelicans days, but since he's joined the Lakers, he wasn't that number one option. It was obviously LeBron. Now, I know towards the end of that, LeBron and the Lakers were kind of trying to push AD as the best player. That didn't work. And then obviously when Nico Harrison comes a calling with Luka Doncic, that immediately went out the window because, hey, I could get Luka Doncic a superstar. And AD's a great player. Like, he's going to be a Hall of Famer, obviously. But you got to use common sense. Like, when we get Paul George, for example, yes, Paul George has the injury history. He's 35 years old. But Paul George is not going to be your best player. He's not even going to be your number 2 option. He's number 3, even depending on the night. He could be number 4 now that we have VJ Edgecombe. AD, I mean, you put him on the Atlanta Hawks, he probably would be the best player. I mean, Jalen Johnson's obviously a phenomenal player, but on paper, it's Anthony Davis. It's not Jalen Johnson because he's just starting to break out. He's not that star yet. Now, can he become an all-star this year? Jalen Johnson, I think he will be, but I think he still needs a year, 2, maybe even more to start getting to that level.
Yeah, there's a difference between being an all-star and carrying a team and being the number one guy on that team, for sure.
Yeah, I just don't understand it. And now that we've seen what can be traded for a player like Trae Young, I just think that sets the tone now for the rest of the league. First of all, free agency is not really a thing anymore. I mean, when the Sixers got Paul George, that was kind of like an anomaly. We don't see big players leaving in free agency anymore. We saw Kevin Durant going to Phoenix in a midseason trade. Same thing with Kyrie Irving. I mean, even in the offseason when KD gets traded to Houston, that was a trade. That wasn't a free agency move. So now that we see what has happened with Trae Young, the other report that came out since our last episode was it looks like Ja Morant is going to be leaving the Memphis Grizzlies. The specific report from Shams said, for the first time, the Memphis Grizzlies are entertaining offers to potentially move two-time All-Star Ja Morant ahead of the February 5th NBA trade deadline. From what I saw, it seems like his preferred destination is the Miami Heat. Am I crazy saying that I think that the Ja Morant situation is pretty much identical to the Trae Young situation. Is that crazy to say?
No, they are very linear. I think Ja has a little bit more upside and potential on paper, as you would say, but Trae has the better track record. He has the playoff success more than Ja has. So they're very similar, and they're both kind of a headache, if we're going to be honest, for their respective teams. So that's the reason that they're not going to build around them anymore, and they're trying to get rid of them.
Yeah, the problem is, so if I compare the two players, obviously, I think Ja Morant is a better player. He is a superstar. There were talks before all the off the court issues that he would be the next face of the league. Then obviously when all that off the court stuff happened, that started to dissipate.
Mm-hmm.
And now the problem is, and it's not just the off the court stuff, it's all the injuries. He is always injured. And one of the greatest things about Ja Morant is he just was so explosive going to the basket. He was one of the best dunkers in the NBA. But because of all the injuries, he stopped making his way to the basket. He started shooting more. Ja Morant is not a shooter at all. He also doesn't play defense. And because he's shooting more, his efficiency is going down.
20% from three right now. It's bad.
That is bad. I mean, and what is he averaging? About 19 points per game right now, I believe it is. Mm-hmm. And that's a low for Ja Morant. And he just doesn't fit in many systems. I know Taylor Jenkins switched his system up last season before he ended up getting fired. And then when Tuomo Cicalo took over, he adapted his system. That still doesn't work with Ja Morant. And even they were butting heads this season. Ja Morant even got suspended because of it. And I think at that point, that's when Ja said, all right, I'm done. I'm out of here. I want a different situation. Miami, I think, would technically make sense. I just don't know what they would have to give up for Ja. And again, now that we have the Trae Young situation, maybe you don't have to give up much. What I did see in the news a couple days ago is the Miami Heat actually decided to hold on to Terry Rozier's contract, which I thought was interesting. Now, knowing what we know about the Trae Young trade, maybe they could just get rid of the Rozier contract and that's the end of it. Now, obviously, I feel like Memphis would just waive it as soon as it's done. It's an expiring contract anyways. Nobody wants to keep Rozier while he's dealing with whatever he's dealing with. Would that be a trade that makes sense? Or do you think that Memphis would say, okay, no, we want Tyler Herro? Because if not, you have a starting lineup of Ja, Herro, Norman Powell, Wiggins, and Bam. And Bam's not even having a great season. Does that make any sense?
I think if Herro would be the first thing that I would ask for if I was Memphis for sure in return. And, you're going to try to keep them, be consistent about trying to get him back. If for whatever reason you see that Pat Riley's not budging and you're going to have to go and now just match salary where now you're using Rozier and whatever spare parts you need, you better make sure you're getting a huge draft pick haul in return. So it's either one or the other. You can keep Herro and build around Ja, Herro, and Bam, fine, but you're going to give us your future in terms of your picks. That's what I would say. I think Memphis would say, and then Miami, they can look at it the same way, just mirrored. Do we want to try to win right now in this window with Ja, Herro, Bam, Norman Powell, Wiggins, etc., or do we say, you know what? Let's give away Herro. We don't think that he's going to be a guy that we can build around as a big three. Maybe they see him better as a six man or as a spare piece, role piece. What do you think?
Well, Tyler Herro, I've said this for years now, especially last year when he became a first-time All-Star. I like Tyler Herro, right? But he's not a number one option. He's just
Mm-mm.
not that type of player. He could be maybe a third option. I thought he was a great piece off the bench for the Jimmy Butler Heat era, but as a star, like I just don't know if he would take the Miami Heat to the next level. Ja might. You put Ja with Bam and Norman Powell and even Wiggins, because if I'm Memphis, I want a young player that I could build around. I mean, you already have Zach Edey, you have Cedric Coward, you have Jalen Wells, you have so many great players there that you could build around. And you look at the Desmond Bane trade, right? They got 5 first-round picks for that, and the only player they got from that was Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, right? They weren't trying to get KCP to, oh, this is the final piece we need for this team. No. The thing is, Orlando wanted to dump his contract, first of all, because he was so bad with them last season. But they wanted picks to build for the future, to build around Zach Edey, Cedric Coward, right? To build around Jalen Wells. I just don't. And if they do trade Ja, I'm also wondering, what does that mean for Jaren Jackson Jr.? Do they try to keep him with this young roster, or do they try to trade him as well?
Well, I saw Rich Paul said that he wouldn't mind the Lakers giving up Austin Reeves straight up for Jaren Jackson Jr. So I don't know why, but yeah, but Rich Paul's Rich Paul, but that's what I saw today.
I don't know about that. I mean, Austin Reeves I know he's been injured for a little bit now, but he's having such a phenomenal season. I know both Luka and AR don't play defense at all, but if you could find a way to get like Jaren Jackson for another piece or something, like I could see that. Because obviously LeBron's not going to be on the roster much longer. I don't know if he'll get traded at the deadline. Probably not. But next season, he's most likely not going to be on the team anymore. I would love to see him on the Lakers. That would be cool, but not for Austin Reeves.
No, I agree.
That just
I wouldn't
be
do
crazy.
it.
No, So you look at the potential teams that Ja could go to, like Miami. I could see it, and maybe Eric Spoelstra, Pat Riley, Mickey Arison. Maybe they could sit down with Ja and see if they could figure out a way to revert him back to the superstar Ja Morant that we saw a few seasons ago, right? There is a world where that can happen. You can possibly get more upside from Ja Morant on a playoff contender, potentially championship contender, than the Wizards are going to from Trae Young. Like Trae Young, the Wizards could be competitive in a couple years. That's definitely possible. But after seeing what the Atlanta Hawks did around Trae Young the last several years, I mean, they tried the DeJounte Murray experiment. That failed. They tried putting these other role players, Gallinari and Herter and John Collins. I mean, again, got him into an Eastern Conference Finals once. Again, part of that I blame Ben Simmons and Doc Rivers for. But since then, they did nothing. I don't know if the Wizards can really build around Trae Young. I think you could really build around Ja Morant, especially when you already have all these great pieces. I mean, Andrew Wiggins won a championship. He's been an all-star, right? He hasn't been great in the last couple of years, but when you need him to lock in, maybe he will. Bam has proven to be one of the better centers in the NBA, right? And you have some great talent on that roster. Norman Powell has been incredible this year. So you put all those pieces together. Are they going to be a championship team this year? Probably not, but you build some chemistry over the next year or two under the Eric Spoelstra leadership, which, I mean, now that Mike Tomlin has stepped down from the Steelers, Eric Spoelstra is the most tenured head coach in the Big Four sports. So he has that experience. He's had success. Even teams that had no business being in the NBA Finals the last couple of years, they made it. And they won a game or two here and there. So it's going to be very interesting. Other than the Miami Heat, I could see a couple other teams. Like I saw the Sacramento Kings as one of them, just because why not? The Kings are always desperate to do something. I obviously think John Morant is better for them than like Zach LaVine, who would obviously have to be included in the deal just for salary. I don't know what Memphis would want with Zach LaVine. So if that would happen, another team would be involved, potentially like Milwaukee, since he's been attached to them. I could see Sacramento. Would that do anything for them? Probably not. At least they get a point guard. I mean, that's at least good. And you compare him with Sabonis. Sabonis has been out most of the year. I guess you could keep DeRozan, but then again, we run into the same problem. You have 3 guys, Ja, Sabonis, DeRozan. They don't play defense and they don't shoot the ball. So you're running.
So what are you going to get?
You're running into the same problem. I also saw Milwaukee, right? It's the same problem. Is Ja a good fit with Giannis Antetokounmpo? No, he's not a good fit at all. They both need the ball in their hand and they don't shoot. Now, Giannis is a phenomenal defender, right? So at least you have that. But I don't think it's a good fit at all. If Damian Lillard didn't work with Giannis, there's no way Ja would work.
No, absolutely. And that's exactly what I was about to say, that if it didn't work with Dame, two guys that needed the ball in their hands, why would Ja, who's more reckless and less professional than Dame, how would it work with him?
And the difference is Dame is one of the best shooters we have in the game. Obviously he's out this year.
Yep.
But, there's still the iconic shot over Paul George, who, still claims that's a bad shot, But I just don't see that. The other two teams I saw that could potentially work, Minnesota I saw, which would be interesting. Now, what you would have to give up, now maybe it would just have to be Naz Reid, but putting like Ja Morant next to Anthony Edwards, that's definitely interesting to me. Like having a starting lineup of Ja, Ant-Man, McDaniels, Julius Randle, and like Rudy Gobert, that could be something.
Yeah, now we're cooking.
And you still would probably have DiVincenzo coming off your bench. You still got some decent young pieces, especially like Terrence Shannon Jr. He's a good player. You probably would have to include Rob Dillingham in the trade, who has not been good for Minnesota at all. And maybe Memphis can see some upside in him, putting him with that young core that they have. I could definitely see that working out.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one that I saw with Toronto, I think Toronto could be an interesting one as well. But then you mentioned it before. Do you want to potentially blow up this team, especially if you have to trade a player like Emmanuel Quickly, who I know is on a big contract? That's the one, like one positive. If you do get rid of Quickly, maybe you have to include RJ Barrett. I don't know. Obviously, you're not touching Scotty Barnes. You're not touching Brandon Ingram. It would have to be one or both of them. I don't know. Do you see that as a move making sense?
No, like I mentioned earlier, if I'm Toronto, I would just stay kind of pat. Memphis on the other side, from their point of view, this just something that came up in my mind when you brought up the Desmond Bain trade. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So they got a haul for that.
Mm-hmm.
If they're going to trade Ja, you presume, and I think they should prioritize the draft picks more than
draft
anything.
Picks. Mm-hmm.
I think that Memphis, what they can do is they can also trade Jaren Jackson Jr. and get the biggest haul of the three, in my opinion, whether it's this year or next year. And then they can almost become like a mini OKC, where they're now hoarding 15, 16 draft picks over a 5-year span. And even though it may look a little bleak in the present, you can sell to your fans like Sam Presti did, hey, the future's coming. And when we hit on these picks, it's going to look a lot better than it did when we were trying to win with Ja, Bain, and Jaren Jackson.
You're going to get way more value for Jaren Jackson Jr. than you're going to get for Ja Morant. And
100%.
So that's why it's like you should try to get rid of both of them now, especially Jaren Jackson Jr. Because if you wait, like let's just say you trade Ja Morant this year, you're able to do it, and you keep Jaren Jackson Jr. for the next year or two. I don't know how long his contract's still good for, but like his value could decrease because his play isn't great this season. But that's just because I don't think he fits in the system anymore. Not saying that Isalo can't coach. Like, I don't know. He hasn't had any success in the NBA yet. I know he's had success overseas, but this is a different league here. So I think you have to try to get rid of them now. You're not going to be competitive at all. Like the whole we're fine in the West, that's gone. That's done for. The West moved on without you. And that's just the end of it. That's the end of Memphis. I mean, they had one good season together. And because they all were running their mouths, whether you're talking about Ja Morant or Dylan Brooks at the time, that's just where they ended up. And they just didn't know how to develop their players. They had a nice young core. They could have became a dynasty one day if they wanted to with what they had over there. It's just not going to happen anymore. They even like one of their biggest offseason moves in Memphis was Ty Jerome. He hasn't played a single game because he's been out all year. I mean, they need to move on. They need to rebuild. And as you said, maybe if they get enough assets for Jaren Jackson Jr., I don't know if you're going to get a single pick. Maybe if you're lucky, you get one first-round pick for Ja Morant. This is your time to start rebuilding. Again, you have – I feel like Memphis has better young talent than Washington does.
I agree.
That you could potentially build around as you get some of these top draft picks. So the trade deadline is going to be very interesting. And I don't know if it's going to be as active as it was last year. Like this Trae Young move could be the biggest move that we get.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nothing else could happen. We have no idea. I want to shift gears a little bit into the Sixers because with the trade deadline, right? Now everybody's healthy. This is the first time where everybody has been healthy in years. Years. They finally got back Trendon Watford and Kelly Oubre. And obviously, their big four has been incredible, right? Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, VJ Edgecombe. They're all available. And the last couple of games, I mean, they played okay. But looking at this roster, before we dive into the specific games, is there any potential moves that they should even consider, or should they stay pat with what they have? The only move like that I could see happening that they have to do is they have to make sure that they sign Dominic Barlow and Jabari Walker on a standard contract. They are still, as of today, on two-way contracts. They still have a little bit of time, but you only have one open roster spot. So you got to figure out who you're going to waive. We've talked about in the past that Eric Gordon would probably be the one to go. So that way you could at least sign both of them. I still think they do need an open roster spot just in case of the buyout market. So we brought up like maybe a Janai Broom gets waived too. But looking at this current roster, I mean, they're fifth in the Eastern Conference. They're still playing well right now. I mean, their record right now is 22-16. They're playing the rest of January, except for like one random Charlotte game at home, which is awesome. Is there any moves you could see happening that if you're Daryl Morey, should consider?
As much as I would love to throw out some different players that I think could help this team and help them make their push for a championship this year, the only problem is how their salaries are structured. So you're not going to get rid of your big three because there's deals and because you're building around them. Okay. So then you're also not going to move on from your young players that are on rookie deals, your VJs and your McCains. So now you're kind of putting yourself into, okay, well, now who's available to trade? And it's a lot of guys that aren't expiring deals. You have your Andre Drummonds and your Kelly Oubre's and Quentin Grimes with his situation being, he's a restricted free agent. So it's tough. As much as I would love for them to make a move, and as we've talked about, maybe they're lacking a little bit of depth at the power forward, or maybe we could find a bench spot that could get bolstered. I don't know if we have the salaries to match and the assets to acquire a player.
I don't think, honestly, at this point, they need to make a move. I think it's going to be a very quiet trade deadline for the Sixers specifically. Like, the problem with the Sixers the last several years has been chemistry, has been continuity, because there's always been big changes in the roster. Obviously, last season, it was a completely new team. Pretty much everyone that was on the roster 2 years ago became a free agent. They only brought back Embiid. Maxey was still in the team, obviously, and like Paul Reed at the time. Everybody else was a brand new addition, and they were injured the entire season. Now, they're able to bring in that continuity. Now that they're all healthy, they're winning games. They're figuring it out. I don't know if they should make any move, even if it's a tiny move, that would make the slightest bit of difference, right? That's why I said maybe leave open a roster spot in the buyout market. If, who knows, there's an injury and somebody's still available, you could add them and see if they add anything. But I just don't know if there's anything you could do that would make any sense. This team is already so good. Now all they need to do is play games together. That's it. And that's what they're doing so far. I mean, and they just went on that road trip. We were concerned about, okay, now they're facing Toronto and Orlando. What happens? I mean, that Orlando game was pretty painful to watch just because nobody could shoot the ball from beyond the arc. I think the Sixers started that game like 0 of 13. They ended that first half 1 of 17. And it's not like, in that game, Orlando was taking advantage of it either, because they were horrible shooting the ball from beyond the arc as well. The Sixers ended the game 4 of 28 from three. The Magic ended it 4 of 29. So it's not like they took advantage at all. But the Sixers were still able to win that game by 12 points. It was 103-91. So great. I mean, Maxey had 29 points and beat at 22. Paul George had 18. I mean, VJ had a couple bad games in there. And then they played that back-to-back in Toronto. And as I said, Embiid and Paul George were not playing in both of those games. We were curious to see if they were going to take turns, like one plays one game, one plays the other, if they were both going to play in the same. What they decided to do is everybody played in that Monday game, which that first half, by the way, was insane, right? They scored 80 points in that first half, 80. Like, they were making everything from three. And at halftime, they were up by 30 points. Now, in the second half, I mean, I don't know. In that second half, they didn't play very well at all. You went from 45 points in the first quarter to 35 in the second, 19 in the third quarter to then 16 in the fourth. I mean, they did not play well in that second half. But again, Toronto couldn't take advantage. And in that first game, Brandon Ingram didn't play either, right? He played in the Monday game. He did not play on Sunday. And I get Toronto, they're still missing guys. I mean, RJ Barrett didn't play. Jakob Poeltl has been out for a while. But it definitely was a good sample size. Now, luckily, the Sixers were able to win the series against the Magic. They were only able to tie the series against the Raptors, which I'd rather tie it than lose it, obviously, especially since you're so close in seeding. But I think it was a great sample size, seeing what they can do. That second half was boring. I mean, I pretty much tuned out most of that second half. The only interesting part was all the Kyle Lowry chants, which I thought was just hilarious that in 2026, people were chanting to see Kyle Lowry enter the game. I mean, yeah, it was Toronto.
He's like a cult hero. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it was exciting. I mean, Maxey was very happy for him. And, that's probably the last time that he's going to step foot on the court, in an NBA jersey. Now, I saw reports that maybe, I don't know if they'll do it this season. This might be a next season thing where he signs like a one-day contract with the Raptors to retire with them. I mean, he's going to get his number retired with the Raptors. That's 1,000% going to happen. He is. I saw controversy about this. And I want to hear what your thoughts are. When he entered the game, I believe it was Kate Scott who said this. He is the greatest Raptor of all time. Now, I personally agree with that. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, they showed on that graphic that you're referring to, he's second all time in points, I assume, to DeMar. And then he's first in assists, steals, threes, everything else. So he was there forever. I mean, he made his name there. He had a little run in Houston, but like Toronto's where he made his name. Obviously, getting Kawhi helped, and that championship kind of cemented him as being a legitimate NBA, star point guard. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy. I mean, it was kind of funny. I mean, I chuckled too. If it was, I don't think Philly would do it. I don't think we would do it in Philly for anyone. But I mean, they gave Iverson a little bit of a cheer when he came back with Denver and stuff. But man, it's like you said, it's what a time.
No, out of current players, no. I mean, if let's just say Joel Embiid gets traded one day, maybe. It's not the same effect because when you think of Toronto, you really think of Kyle Lowry. Now, the argument for Kawhi, I think, is just kind of dumb. Yes, I understand he is one of the main reasons why they won a championship that year. That is factual, but he was there for 1 year and he didn't want to be there. So as soon as he could leave, he left. The only reason why he went to Toronto is because he wanted to get out of San Antonio. That was it.
Yeah, the Spurs almost spited him by saying, okay, we'll send you to Toronto then. We're going to send you out of the country if you don't want to be here.
And Toronto, they took a flyer. Like they knew it was a rental. So, and they took advantage of it. They had enough pieces that worked. I mean, again, Siakam, Lowry, they traded for Marc Gasol halfway through the season.
Yep.
Yeah. Van Vliet, Anunoby. Like they just had a Norman Powell. They had a great core that won a championship. Now, DeMar DeRozan, I would understand that argument, but because DeMar didn't ever win with them and Lowry did, I think that's what makes the difference. That's why I don't understand the argument for mostly anyone else. It's got to be Kyle Lowry. So like I understood why everyone was chanting for him. It was exciting for them, especially since they were getting their butts whooped in that first half. It was nice to see. And if Lowry signs a one-day contract or something next season, like I'm going to be happy for him too. He's a great player. I mean, now obviously he's washed and clearly he's ready for retirement. He's there as a mentor guy, a locker guy. But it definitely was exciting to see. But now that the Sixers ended this road trip, right? They ended this, first of all, based on your thoughts, right? Seeing those 3 games. They won 2 out of 3 on the road. Does this change your opinion at all? I know those weren't the best played games from the Sixers this season, but does that change your mindset that they can win games against these playoff teams like Orlando and Toronto?
I think they're a step above Orlando, just from what I've seen this season with Orlando and them not really being able to get on the same page with their injuries and their issues. Toronto, I feel like that's the bar. I feel like we're dead even with Toronto right now. I don't think we're there with Detroit and Boston and New York yet, but I think that you really can't have anybody else above us in Toronto right now.
No, I mean, Boston, again, Boston's just so weird to me because of the whole Tatum thing at the end of the year. I don't know how that's going to play out. But I saw a report that he could come back in March, which would be insane coming back from an
Mm-hmm.
injury like that. But yeah, I could see them on par with Toronto. My only thing is like Toronto is still a young team. I mean, they have yet to make the playoffs yet. So like if the Sixers face the Raptors in a playoff series, I would give it to the Sixers just because you have these players that have had plenty of playoff experience, in particular Embiid, Maxey, and PG. They've all been in the playoffs. They've all had, I don't want to say like playoff success as they won a championship, but they've had great performances in the playoffs. You look at that Knicks series, Tyrese Maxey was insane, and Embiid's averaging 30 points a game on one leg and half a face. So who knows? I would give that series to the Sixers, but it could go either way. But now that they're home, because as I said, they are home for pretty much the rest of January. They have one random road game, which is a back-to-back, by the way, in Charlotte. Now that they're home, now that they're all healthy, I mean, and in that homestand, I believe they only have two back-to-backs there. They face, as we're recording this, they're going to play the Cleveland Cavaliers tonight, the first game. They play them again on Friday. Then they play a back-to-back with the Pacers and the Suns. Then they play the Rockets, the Knicks. They have that one road game in Charlotte. And then on the back half of the back-to-back, they have Milwaukee, Sacramento, and New Orleans. I feel like most of those games are probably wins. The New York game could be very interesting. It's at home. It's the first game at home with the Knicks. Maybe they want to get revenge. Cleveland, I think they'll win at least one of those two games. What do you think is going to happen now that they're spending the rest of this month, a nice long chunk of time at home?
Yeah, the 10 games left in the month and 9 of them are at home, like you're mentioning. The back-to-back with Cleveland is interesting because I know you're not too keen on Cleveland. You think they're a little sus, and this would be a good litmus test, kind of similar to how the back-to-back with Toronto was. The rest of the opponents, we do have a couple Western Conference opponents that are mixed in there, a little bit of tough, Phoenix and Houston. But I think the Knicks will be looking for revenge, but there's no reason this team shouldn't go 7-3 in this stretch at minimum, in my opinion.
Yeah, Cleveland has not been great this season. I mean, they're seventh in the Eastern Conference, 22-19. That's a huge drop off where they were last year, and they came back with basically the same team. Honestly, they should have gotten better because one of their offseason moves was getting rid of Isaac Okoro, who wasn't great for Cleveland, and they got Lonzo Ball, who was basically the replacement of Ty Jerome. Now seeing that Jerome's been out all year, clearly that was a good move. But they got their butts kicked by the Jazz on Monday. I don't know. Like, I feel like Cleveland could win one of those games. I like their talent. Like, I love Donovan Mitchell. Darius Garland's a good player. Jared Allen, I think he's a decent center. Evan Mobley can turn into a star one day. It could be definitely an interesting two games. It definitely will be a nice sample size. And then Indiana, I mean, they're trying to lose. Phoenix, they're a good team. But again, I don't think they're a real contender. Houston, they're a mess right now, which saddens me a little bit just because I am rooting for them low key to have a good season just because I love Kevin Durant as a player. But clearly they're losing games so much. Kevin Durant even threw his water bottle down the other night. He's clearly not happy with how they're playing. This could definitely be an interesting stretch. And then after that, the Knicks, that will be a competitive game. Charlotte, that's an easy win. Milwaukee, they have not been good whatsoever. I mean, even with Giannis back, they're 17-23. They've lost 3 of their last 4 games. Minnesota, Denver. I feel like Denver's beating everybody despite not having half the roster. And then they even, lost to the Golden State Warriors. That in my opinion will be a win. And then Sacramento, New Orleans, those teams are terrible. So this is going to be a nice sample size of seeing them at home, seeing them kind of gain that continuity. And then February, this schedule this season is just so weird. It's so bizarre. It's so, I don't even know what to even call the schedule this season, but they play most of January at home. They pretty much play all of February on the road. Like they started on that late West Coast trip, Clippers, Golden State, Lakers, Phoenix, Portland. They play 3 games in total. And I know there's the All-Star break in there. They play 3 games at home. And then obviously you have March and that's, the last stretch of the season there. So as we're approaching kind of the second half of the season, because we're almost there, right? What do you hope to see from the Sixers as we're kind of getting towards the back half?
Well, the obvious answer, of course, is health. I mean, that's just a layup answer, but something that you've mentioned in this episode already is I really want to see them just continue to grow the chemistry because that's the thing they've lacked. They've had the talent, and even when Embiid has been healthy for the playoffs, he hasn't really had the floor time with his other pieces on the team. So I think that them being able to play together, the big three. I know Kate Scott mentioned in post game yesterday that the big three is finally starting to play together, get their feet wet. We've called it a big four, so we're obviously very high on the prospects of the team. But the main thing is just not messing up the chemistry, not messing up the camaraderie, and not getting hurt.
Right. And I think the difference is, again, Tyrese Maxey is just on a whole other level. I mean, it doesn't matter if somebody's struggling. Like if VJ's struggling one night, if Bede's having a bad night, if Paul George isn't showing up. Like the last several games, right now he's averaging 30.9 points per game, 48% from the field, and then 41% from three. That's insane. Like that's just so hard to do. And he's playing great defense at the same time. I mean, this is probably his best season defensively in his career. And Joel Embiid, I think since he's been back, he's playing at an all-star level. Like, and I know the all-star voting actually ends, I believe it ends today, but I'm hoping to see maybe even Joel Embiid on that all-star roster. He probably won't play, let's be clear, but it would be cool to see both Maxey and Embiid because it's really showing fans that the Sixers might be back, right? And no, not everyone's going to be pretty. Tyrese Maxey said that the other night. That's just the case with any sport, like especially with this team who struggles so hard in the third quarter. Sometimes they struggle in the fourth quarter just because I don't think they play the greatest defense in terms of the other team driving to the rim, like fast break points. They're just not good at defending against the fast break. They're still a horrible rebounding team. They just can never seem to figure that out. I just watched so many times Toronto get offensive rebound after offensive rebound, and you have the same Sixers players just standing there watching. It's just, I don't think you could fix that. It's just a mentality issue in terms of rebounding. Like there's no skill to rebounding. Like, you know, there are very skilled rebounders in the NBA. Obviously, Andre Drummond is one of the best, you know, of all time. But hopefully, you know, with Embiid and Maxey playing at the level they're playing, it gets Sixers fans excited. And teams are now starting to look at them. It's not, oh, well, Maxey's just carrying an injured team. No, Maxey is the number one option on a possible championship contender team. So I don't know if they're going to be a top seed in the Eastern Conference. That doesn't really matter at the end of the day. What matters is they stay healthy. They play consistently. Like, again, back-to-backs, we know that that's never going to change. Joel, Paul George, they're never going to play on back-to-backs. They're always going to play on one game or the other. I like that they're kind of staggering it out where they're both playing in one game. That way you can actually get a real sample because you're not going to see playoff games where one's playing and the other's not unless there's an injury.
I was going to say there's no back-to-backs in the playoffs. So
there's no back-to-backs. Yeah, no back-to-backs in the playoffs. So it's just kind of one of those, because of how Maxey is playing, how VJ Edgecombe is playing. I mean, we haven't even really talked about VJ in this episode. I mean, he's averaging as a rookie 16.1 points per game, 43% from the field, 38% from three. I mean, he's working his way back into that rookie of the year conversation. I think he should win based on how he's playing. And again, maybe it goes to Cooper Flagg, but if not Cooper Flagg, it's got to be VJ. I mean, this is a scary team to look out for.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost too with VJ's numbers as a season long because we're so fixated on like the week by week and the game by game results. And we have said all season that he's going to hit rookie walls throughout this year. It's just inevitable. Every player goes through it. So just when he does have a bad stretch or two with his shot, or maybe he's not making the best decisions, just remember that he's having a phenomenal rookie season.
Yeah, and it's some of the best we've seen. I mean, obviously we had a rookie of the year season from Ben Simmons, but Ben Simmons was never a scorer. Right. I mean, you know, Ben Simmons was very talented his rookie year, but it wasn't one of those like, oh, like he's becoming a superstar overnight. Right. We saw the potential. We're like, okay, his defense is great. He's very explosive. But hey, if he develops a jump shot, if he can learn how to shoot a free throw, if he can learn how to shoot the three ball, okay. But VJ is already so dominant, both offensively and defensively. And when you looked at the preseason, when you looked at maybe the first couple of games, I mean, it just was night and day. The preseason, we were like, okay, we don't know what to expect. We'll see how he fits into this roster with 3 all-star level players, 2 that might be injured the whole season. We don't know. But after that Abu Dhabi trip, comes in and, he's basically a dominant second option to Tyrese. And yes, there was a little bit of adjustment once you got Joel and Paul George in there, but now I think they're starting to figure it out. Joel is starting to look very comfortable, right? And no, he's not MVP form. And I don't think he'll ever get back to that. But being Joel Embiid and averaging 24 points per game, 47% from the field. He's not shooting well from three right now, about 23% from three. But you look at his field goal percentage and you look at his points per game. Now, a lot of that is an aggregate of the entire season, because when he first was playing again, he wasn't looking great. But you got to look at these last several games. Let's see, 27 points, 22, 28, 32, 26, 22, 34, 31, 27, 22. That's since December 14th right there. I mean, those are great numbers. So putting him with Tyrese, putting him with this dominant offense, and they're playing great defensively, it's going to be so hard to stop this team. That's why the East is so wide open, and seeding only means so much, because you look at those top 5 or 6 teams, any of them could go on a run. I mean, the Raptors could have an Indiana Pacers type year. You don't know. They could have it. I mean, we'll see how Jason Tatum fits back in when he returns. We'll see what happens with the New York Knicks. Their depth isn't as great as we thought it was going to be. Obviously, they have a new head coach. We'll see how that system fits into a playoff scenario, because Mike Brown, he had 1 playoff appearance with the Kings. We'll see how that works with the Knicks. And then the Pistons, they're still a young team. I mean, they finally entered the playoffs, but they haven't won a playoff series yet. Would I be surprised if they made it to the finals? Oh, heck no. Right? Would I be surprised if they don't? No. Right? I mean, they're still a young team. They're dealing with injuries themselves. I mean, Cade's been out the last couple of games. They've had injuries to Tobias Harris and Jalen Duren.
Yep.
So you never know what's going to happen in the Eastern Conference. But I'm so looking forward to watching the Sixers over this stretch. I know I'm going to definitely one game. I'm going to the Houston game, which I'm definitely hyped about, because, again, Kevin Durant is one of my favorite players of all time. So seeing him on the court with hopefully a healthy roster. I know Şengün just returned. Amen Thompson is looking phenomenal. That is going to be so much fun to watch. But I appreciate you all for watching. Please make sure to listen to us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, iHeart, Amazon. We're on so many different platforms. Make sure to like, share, give us a 5-star review. Tell us how much you love listening to this podcast. I am DJ Sports Zone. We have Hob Harris here, and we will see you next time.
10-9-8.